everyone, this is Kelly from The Truth in Story, and I am here to do another video about my journey tokens. I have already done the journey to the journey tokens, which I have, which I'll put a link to in the description box below. But definitely there were some requests for, and my intentions were to do some videos on how you would use these. Not everybody has worked with casting systems before, and certainly they haven't worked with this particular casting system before. So I thought that that would be sort of the next order of business. I will be doing a different one on casting cloths, where you have built-in sort of positions and things like that put in. I have a video of a rune cloth that I have, but I do have a cloth coming that is more directly, a little bit more open versus directly relating to runes. And so once I get that, I will do a video about using casting cloths and casting sheets and things of that nature where you can add positions in, as well as even using tarot cards and oracle cards, which I actually like to cast on as well. But we'll do all that in another video. So this video will just be about sort of using them without any pre-configured sheets or anything like that. So this that you see here, let's move the bag out of the way here. This that you see here is what I just made yesterday to be able to make this video. I have had a casting board for years, literally I think maybe even literally 4 years, 3 or 4 years. It is black and I quite loved it. It has been used over and over again and I can't find it anywhere. I mean, there's just nowhere. I have been through my entire apartment over multiple times. Even now, just saying that, I'm kind of looking like underneath my table just to make sure. I have no clue where it is. I'm just writing it off to the Fae have stolen it, because I don't know what else to say is where it's gone. I have literally gone through my apartment multiple times. So why do I like to use this? Well, number one, I do teach runes and I teach OMs, and obviously I'm going to be working with people a lot with my own tokens. And one of the things that happens when you end charm casting, so that's when I use the most with my black one. So I also cast charms, and especially charms, I will say, because they're a little bit all different shapes and sizes and slicknesses, and sometimes they can really go flying. So what they do, if you're not using a casting cloth, because cloths do help with that, but if you're not using a casting cloth, which a lot of times I'm not, it keeps your, I'm trying to be vigorous here, it keeps your tokens from continuing off and onto the floor. And so I also do like a hands down view when I'm teaching OMs and I'm teaching runes. And again, I don't want to be chasing the runes on my desk as they go rolling somewhere, especially even these, because they do actually get a good roll on them sometimes. And so having some kind of a lip can really help to just contain your casting. So as I talked about, and probably if you haven't watched Journey to the Journey Tokens, my recommendation is that you probably watch that first, just because, or at least the last part of it, just because it does kind of talk about the shapes of the tokens and how that has really informed some. I need to trim the inside of my bag. It's got some hairs growing, some threads growing. The shape of the tokens, which wasn't on purpose until I saw them, really is fabulous for creating shapes. And I'm going to call I have two labels in the book, and we'll look at that in a second. One of those is there are shapes, which is like this. I call the honeycomb shape because it looks like a honeycomb shape. And so that is the shape of a honeycomb, right? But then there is also what are the different spreads that you can do with that shape. And so in the guidebook, again, this is just my print version of the guidebook. As I am doing editing, I think it's far better to do it on paper. You can do so much, like right here, I can say space, because there's not extra space, but there is on all the other ones. So you can do so much digitally, but then it's time to get it on a piece of paper. So blockages, reversals, and then we get to spreads. So there are for use, and I love this. I actually have used this shapes and spreads far more than I ever expected that I would have before coming up with this honeycomb shape or the hexagon shape, which just lends itself so well to shapes. And so, for example, this I call the hopscotch. If you ever, on 1 foot, 2 foot, 1 foot, 2 foot, you can kind of hopscotch your way through. But from this hopscotch shape, you can do a variety of ones. I give an example of the 4-direction spread, and in the final guidebook, I will probably add other suggestions. But for example, right, you can be, you could do a past, present, and future and a guidance card figure there, symbol. You could do the same thing with within without advice, with a piece of advice or a piece, well, that has advice. So I wouldn't maybe that one, but I do a lot of what to hold on to, what to let go of, and what to lean into, and then maybe a piece of advice. You can use, again, the 4 directions, which is how I use it. Anything that there are sets of 4 that you can think of, you can do it as above, so below, and then look to the past and the future, because that can give you information. There's just a lot of different of the 4 elements. Sorry, I do that with the 5 with this one actually, but you could just do a 4 element spread here. For me, because it's just the order I do things in, it would be fire and air and water and earth. So you could do the 4 elements there. It's a shape that lends itself to a variety of spreads. And then, for example, the honeycomb shape, which is my favorite, especially for a general reading. I just did one last night, which I actually think are what these are from, and it was really fantastic. I've done a lot of these for myself. It's worked out really well as sort of a weekly energy and what's going on, kind of the energy surrounding things. So we'll try that in a minute. But it's a honeycomb shape that, in this case, it's an energetic elemental spread. So I have sort of the heart of the matter in the middle, what's active, what you're open to, a receptive energy, and then the 4 elements: fire, air, water, and earth. And so it just kind of gives us a really great general reading. But again, anything that you want, the 7-figure, any kind of spread that you can think of that would have 7 positions in it, are going to be something that you could plug into this. A garden shape. So I like the paths I'm missing. So here, see, we're editing while we go. Somehow that little number got missing, as they're wont to do. So there you have the shape, and then you can plug in any kind of linear. This could be 3, this could be 5, this could be 7, this could be 9. In this one example, it's similar to a get there reading that I do with Kipper cards, where it's like, okay, this is where you are right now, this is where you want to get there, and then in a linear path, what do you need to know in order to kind of move the energy in the direction that you're trying to get there, get to. So again, it's a shape that you can then plug in a spread with. And then there is the hive shape, which is the whole shebang, and it's read much like a tableau. This I will be putting in with my next video that I use, like spread casting cloths, printout sheets, and then something like this with a tableau printout sheet. So we won't be doing that one today, but we will come back to that one. So this is before we ever get into just pure casting, right? There are ways, and this should look familiar to people who read tarot cards or oracle cards or Lenormand cards. It's about having a spread in mind and then doing a reading off of that. So let's do one from each just so we can see. So we'll start with the 4 directions spread here. And this is one that's really great when you're trying to orient yourself in a situation, because it covers the beginning, the middle, and the end of a situation, as well as the aftermath. This is something that I use in geomancy. When you put a geomancy chart into the house chart, there is a way to look at that linear motion of a situation and get a feel for where things are headed, where things may be at. And the purpose of this is, of all of this. So one of the things that I see with this system, or my way of working with this, the symbols that I put into my system, are to be able to gauge it's all about energy. It's all about being able to get an idea of where the energy is at in the situation or for yourself right now, and that giving you information about what needs to be shifted, what needs to be changed. I don't believe in a fixed future. I believe that the future is always shifting and changing depending on our choices and decisions, as well as the choices and decisions of other people. And that belief in a flexible, movable future certainly lends itself to, or is a part of everything that I do in terms of divination, because then my purpose of divination isn't just to take a peek and to see where things are going, which is something we can do, but it's more importantly to see where things are at, so that you know how to start to shift the energy if you need to, or enhance and shore up a direction that you're liking where it's going. So if you do a reading, at whatever kind of reading it may be, and you don't like what you see, that's okay, because that just gives you information about, you know what, I'm going to have to, if I really still do want this to work, I'm going to have to do more work so that I can get things moving in the direction that I want it to go in. Or the opposite is true. Let's say you get a reading and everything's coming up roses and you're like, yes, this is fabulous. I'm going to do amazing on my finals in my master's in college, so I don't need to do anything else about it. Oh, no, no, no. It's giving you a picture of where things are headed right now with the work that you've done. If you then just turned around and stopped doing any work and stopped studying and all of this, now you're shifting the energy in another direction. Right? So for me, whether a reading is positive or negative is somewhat irrelevant in the terms of all of it is still giving you information so that you can shift, attempt to shift. Can we always shift? No. But can we attempt to shift, put our energy behind, shore up something that we're liking where it's going, start to move the energy over of something that we are not too thrilled with things are going. It's all information to help us make choices and decisions. That's important. I know that seemed like a really good big ramble, which I'm known to do anyways, but it's important. I tell this to students all the time. It is so important to understand what you believe about the future, what you believe about energy and how energy works in the world, because that is going to inform the way that you read and the way that you interpret things. And so it's very important. So we're going to do the hopscotch shape. So it's similar to shuffling. If you've never cast before, this is similar to shuffling. As you're mixing through your hands, you're thinking about the questions, right? You're thinking about what's going on. So I have somebody that I know that is in a particular situation regarding work. There's been some shifts and changes occurring, and just want to get an energetic feel about what's going on and where things are at, so to speak. So we're going to pull 4 tokens. Starting with the east, I do move from the east to the south to the west and to the north. There's different ways that you can do that. There are different associations for the 4 directions depending on your culture, your spiritual path, traditions. There are so many different ways to do this. I'm going to obviously do them from the area or from the mindset that I come from, but at the same time, in a more broad sense, I'm really looking at the beginning of the situation to the east, the middle situation situation to the south, which can have challenges that might occur there. The sort of end of the situation to the west where the sun sets, and then up into the north is sort of the aftermath, or getting a clear picture of what things, how things occurred, and being able to gain some insight to what happened and how is it going to affect you in the long term. So this person has recently switched their job, not their job, they're still in the same company, but they shifted the focus of their job, and things are a little bit in disarray as those things get shifted. So that's kind of the overall focus there. So while I'm kind of pulling them out or shuffling them in my hands, I am thinking of the question at hand. And then you can either pull, reach in and say, I'm not going to do this as the actual reading, but you could pull in, and if you're adept at grabbing, you could grab the 4 tokens at once. I do this sometimes with sets of 3 because I can generally grab a nice little handful and then I lay them down from the bottom, as being first, second, and third. So I tend to do that often when there are sets of 3, which is often when I'm casting a 9 figure. But when it's different numbers, and it's not a lot, I tend to either grab in sets of 3 and then grab the final one, or go one at a time. I'm not a huge fan of one at a time, but maybe that's my impatience showing through. So in this case, I am able to grab 4 and feel good about it. And I just lay from the bottom down. Again, you can do this however you so choose. When I'm laying in a spread, we're not going to get into, well, we'll talk a little bit about it, but I'm not going to use reversals today, but I do pay attention to it. So in this case, I'm moving from the east to the south, to the west, to the north, right? So I just kind of get them down in their positions. Now, because of the way I'm casting, I could pay attention to the fact that this is reversed, which I do, or face down, which I do much more than I worry about whether something is upside down or not. Coming from OMs where you don't, or I don't use reversals, and even in runes, I don't really use reversals, and even in charm casting, I pay far more attention to whether something is face down, and I kind of look at that as perhaps that energy is being blocked in some way, or just not fully into motion. So I do like to pay attention to that. I don't as much in spreads, but when I'm casting, I'm always paying attention to that. So those are the kinds of things that you'll have to see what works for you. But I'm going to pay attention to the fact of that, but I'm not going to give it a lot of. I'm so glad we got this so we can check it. So here in the east, which is the beginning of the situation, this was face down. So since I laid it down, I'm saying to my mind, okay, there's some energy in the start of things. She's just shifted. There's a lot of stuff going on, and it's not fully, we're not even fully into the beginning of things, and some of that energy is a little bit blocked. And what we're getting out of here is crystal, the crystal card. And for me, in a general sense, this is about needing some deep down soul support. And this is true because this person does suffer a little bit from, this is somebody I know fairly well, and this person does suffer a little bit from not trusting themselves or not having a lot of self-esteem. So this was actually what I would consider to be a promotion, but they may not be really internalizing that because they are always thinking, that this is something they should be, this happening because of their value. And so they're needing some soul support as they navigate this. Now, because we got, thank you to the universe, we got the crystal. This means you're going to roll your d20 to see what crystal she could use, or what energies she could use to support herself in the beginning of this. So I roll, get a 17. Again, there's something with the number 17. And again, it's not been just this dice, so I know it's not that because I did check. Trust me. So then, in my system, you would go to your chart, go to crystals, and then for me, I would go to my own chart, and we have obsidian. Now, that doesn't surprise me because obsidian is something that I go to a lot. But obsidian is a really solid, weighty crystal. For me, there is very much a different energy between a sense of grounding, as in putting in roots to the ground and being rooted and grounded, versus obsidian. Again, this is just me. Everybody has got their own experience with these things. But this is a major crystal for me in terms of grief work and healing. And this has got more of that sense of a weight when you feel like you're floating off and you're disconnected and you're fragmenting. This is sort of brings all the pieces back together and sort of holds you in this. It's like, it would be like, you know, having a weighted blanket, or like you're not feeling really well and you go into bed and you pile on like 3 or 4 blankets, because not just because you might have a fever and you're cold, but because the weight of it just makes you feel comforted. That's what I think about with obsidian. And for a couple of different reasons, I can certainly see why that energy would come into play for this particular person. But in a general sense, that is letting her know that she sort of needs to come back to center, sort of bring in the scattered pieces, bring in a soul level, just kind of stop, kind of pause, and sort of hold solid there, and allow that sort of energetic support do what she needs to do. So with me, it might literally be sitting with a piece of obsidian, right? For somebody else, it may be having a day sitting in bed and reading books, or it may be getting together with particular people who might have that effect on her. You know, maybe putting something in her workspace to sort of bring her focused here while she's getting started. But that energy is at play, and it's at play, and it's important in this beginning stages of things. What I like to see is that in the middle stages of things, which is down here in the position of south here, and this is where challenges and things can occur, but this is where all the work is being done, right? So if we start out on a journey and we end our journey, it's the in-between phases that are really important. That's where we're going to meet obstacles. That's where we're going to meet challenges that we have victories over. All kinds of things are going to occur in that middle space, right? So that becomes, in my opinion, the middle space and the aftermath become the most important aspects of this type of a reading. I'm trying to move quickly and not do a full reading here, but my point is that these particular figures, if you've ever seen a birth chart, a birth chart is a circle and it's cut into pies. You often seen it cut into 12 pies pieces because those are the houses of your astrology chart. Well, you can also take an astrology chart and cut it into bigger pieces of pie that we all would secretly rather have than the smaller, the 8th, or the, in the case of a 12th, in the case of a birth chart, but this is a quarter, right? It's cut into quarters, and these are relating to the first 3 houses. Relate to the stage of beginnings, just beginning to become a human being, beginning to be able to interact with the world around you in the 2nd house, beginning to take in knowledge and communicate knowledge in the 3rd house. It's the beginnings of things. The second quadrant is the quadrant of development, where you're starting to develop different things. And then moving to the 3rd quadrant, this is the quadrant of achievement. And there's obviously 3 houses there as well. So in my system, the first is to do with, think of this as your stage of developing as a person. So the first is that conception, that spark, that beginning of who you are. The second is more along the lines of developing further and stronger connections and ties, and developing yourself further in the idea of youth. So you could have conception, child, or youth. This third here is achievement or adulthood, you know, becoming an adulthood, being hopefully a person who is a thriving person in the world, their own personhood. And then the fourth quadrant here reflects that elder stage of maturity that can occur. So here it is the adult stage. She's being an adult. She's adult. This is kind of funny because this is something we've talked a little bit about, because she is a young adult, but sometimes she gets surprised at the ways in which she needs to be an adult. So it's like she's getting an adult, but it's also that quadrant of achievement where you're really achieving independence and being this strong human being. So this is going to be an opportunity for her to really show her independence at work, to be able to achieve the things that she needs to achieve. So that's really promising to see there. Then in the position of the west, where things start to culminate and come to an end in regards to this phase that she's in, her job will carry on, but we're in this shift that's going on at work. And when that shift starts to settle in and come to the end, we actually have the symbol for the direction of south, for the southern. As you can see, there's 4 directions here. Whichever way the arrow is pointing tells you what direction that is in. And so in the direction of the south, breathe, because this is also a direction spread. So in the direction of the west, where things are ending, she has the southern direction of this idea of the middle part, where there are challenges to be met. There are things that kind of energy is going to carry forward, which really makes sense, because she's not just going to do this particular new job for a set amount of time, but it's something that is going to be ongoing, that she's going to be. There are going to be challenges to be faced. There are achievements that are going to occur. Things are going to continue to develop, and that certainly makes sense. So she needs to be, well, we can see the aftermath. We actually have the lower world, and the lower world is part of, there are 3 parts of the tree in this tokens. So we have an upper world token, we have a middle world token where the trunk is, and then we have a lower world token, which has obviously the roots of the tree going inward. And that's interesting, because it does talk about, in the end, she's really going to root and ground herself. Like, this really has more of that connotation there. But more than that, for me, the lower world is where we go for tapping into animal spirit energy, tapping into ancestor energy, really knowing where you come from and gaining a really good support. This can also have, for me, elder type energy to it. So it is this idea as she goes forward, kind of pulling her roots in. I think she's going to learn a lot about herself, and I think it's going to be important for her to know where to set up networks and connections that might be able to help her as she continues to go forward, or she's going to gain those types of energies as this continues forward into the future. Again, it's hard to concisely do a quick reading whenever I do these, because I want to go full in, because they're real questions, but I will talk to her. I'll take a picture of this and talk to her more about it later. But so you can see where this shape, which is the shape of the hopscotch, can be, what you can do is overlay on top of it positions, in this case, the 4 directions. I could take the same shapes, and I said I was going to take a picture of that, and I didn't, but I can come back and snapshot from there. I could take the same shape. So this one I'm not going to do an actual reading of. I'm just going to grab some other tokens. But I could do the same shape here, right? And do the 4 directions. Instead of doing 5 directions, I could do 4 directions. So I could do, for me, that would be fire, air, water, and earth, and I can do a reading just on those 4 positions. I'm just trying to think of other 4 positions that you can plug in there. So we've got, that's the concept that I really excites me, is that you have the shape, And then you have spreads that you can overlay on top of that. And you can find all kinds of, any kind of tarot reading that you might do is something that you can do, or oracle, any kind of spread in a sense can be done the same way you would. And you can do this with any casting system, right? Like I could take runes and just pull 4 runes in the position of those positions, and you can read them that way. So this is an example of spreads. That's the hopscotch shape. Let's go back here. The next one I think will be the honeycomb shape. And again, this is probably the one I have done the absolute most, just because it's a great general reading. And so I have a particular person who has allowed me to do a general reading. I just don't like doing fake readings. I like to have a real reading in mind, because I think it helps to have there to be an actual answer. You know, it's really hard if you don't have a question. How do you have an answer? And so I usually always try to do, and when I don't, they always fall very, very short. So I have a few people who just let me do it. You know, I have kind of I don't also do readings for people who haven't asked, and so I have a few people that I have kind of carte blanche to be able to do readings for them whenever I want. Which is very helpful. Okay, so I'm pulling the center one. So in this case, this has the 5 elements, and then it has active and receptive energy here. So in this case, it starts with in the center. Now, this is one of the, I think, an example of one of the tokens that will be, the symbols that will be least familiar for people. When I was coming to the 4 seasons, I thought, okay, well, what is a symbol for the 4? Yes, I could do a snowflake and a flower and a leaf and a sun or something like that for the 4 seasons, but the 4 seasons don't look the same. There are countries and places in the world in which the winter does not have a snowflake, right? So I really didn't want to do that. And so Patrick, actually, when he was looking up glyphs for his astrological deck, he stumbled on these old, from an old almanac. These are actual symbols for the 4 seasons. I still think that, you know, that's 4 that are going to be, you're probably going to have to at least look them up a couple times, but I personally have found very quickly for me to remember what they are. And many, or I would say most of the other ones are really recognizable for what they are. So it makes it pretty easy, I think, in a 45 token or symbol system to be able to recognize most of them without having to look too hard. This one is one you probably have to remember. But this is spring. If you just kind of look at it without, you know, staring too closely, it almost looks like a rabbit's ears that haven't been finished being drawn there. And so that reminds me of spring, and so it's pretty easy to remember that that's spring. So one of the things that's interesting is that when you have a system that is full of a variety of cycles, such as the seasons, the moons, the life stages, such as, you know, conception and childhood and adulthood and elder stage, right? You would worry, or I was certainly worried, that you would have overlapping energies, such as a whole bunch of new beginnings, right? Because we can throw new beginnings on all kinds of things. We see spring and we think, oh, it's new beginnings. We see the new moon and we think, oh, new beginnings, like the beginning of the moon phase. But they are actually very different energies, whereas the stages of being, so to speak, have to do with our intrinsic self and our becoming are who we're going to become through the stages of these cycles. For me, the new moon is very much about setting specifically and focused intention. It's a very powerful point to be able to set new goals and new intentions, and the energy is very focused and intent, so to speak. And for me, springtime, the seasons are more about our environment. It's about what's going on around us, more in the world around us. So while you might think, because you have these variety of cycles, that you would have, so for example, here you would have spring, you would think as new beginnings. The new moon could be new beginnings. Conception could be new beginnings, right? And you would worry, or I did as a person trying to create something, that could be repetitive energy. But in fact, I really enjoyed sinking into the understanding that these are very different energies. And I just have loved that. So here at the heart of things, of this general reading, we can see some freshness, some spring, some things that are starting to grow. This is a good time to plant, right, in the spring for this person. But it's talking about their environment, the world around them, the energy around them, setting their world to right so that it is ready to grow the things that they want to grow, setting their world to be optimal for fresh energy to come in. And so this really takes what is at the heart of this reading for this person and sets it in the tone of their environment and the world that's around them. So I love that. So then with this particular one, I like to see sort of what is the energy that they should be really active regarding, which is up at the top. So we're looking for the energy that is, really that focused intent there. And here we actually have cycles. So this is that sort of day and night, the sun and the moon. This is the understanding, while the individual tokens or symbols that are within the cycle's suit all speak to different stages within a cycle. This is a symbol that speaks to cycles in general, to the understanding that life is continually shifting and changing. We are continually at the beginning, the middle, and the end, and then starting back over again in so many different ways. At least for my worldview, it is a continual, ongoing process. And so this really speaks to active shifts and changes and cycles that are occurring. And so setting up her environment so that has an opportunity to go and not throw her out of whack too much is going to be important. So it's giving us a picture of what are the energies surrounding her right now. Now, in the bottom position are the what to be open to, where this is actively engaging in the cycles that are going around, not shirking away, not trying to avoid the shifts and changes. These are what is actively in play, and she needs to be ready to roll with that. There are some things that we just need to sort of be open and just paying attention to, but it doesn't take the same degree of activity that the active one. This comes from Geomancy. The figures for the active and receptive are a single dot and a double dot. And this comes from that understanding in Geomancy. Also, you can think of it as yin and yang, active and receptive, masculine and feminine, that kind of thing. This is interesting here. So here we have what I call the abdication. So there are figures in the set that have to do with how the energies can be reacting to certain things, whether they be being blocked, whether they are disrupted, whether they are hidden and we can't see them. It's sort of how is that energy being interacted with in what some people might call shadow ways or negative ways, but they're important to be aware of. And one of the things that I really would want is the idea of abdication. So this would certainly be akin to how I see the Devil card in tarot. And it's an important energy, right? It's important to know when we have given over our energy or our power away, and also our responsibility, that when we have given away the responsibility for choices and decisions. And so this is in the position of receptive, being open to, knowing. So being open and receptive to seeing the ways in which she may have given over her power, that she may have given over some responsibility and might need to shift cycles, right, and actively pursue that back again. So that's an interesting one there. And then I'm going to pull 4, and again, I'm just trying to keep this fairly quick just so you can see. This is just, in my opinion, these spreads, using spreads, are just like any other thing that you would do in terms of whether you're using playing cards or whether you're using Oracle or you're using Tarot or you're using Lenormand or Kipper, anything like that. You have a position. So this next position is the position of fire. This is our transformative energy. It is things that are shifting and changing. It's our creative energy, right? So what is the energy at play in that specific part of her life right now? So it's no different than, you know, pulling and putting a card there. We've got a position in play. Now, if I wanted to read this as blocked, the fact that I pulled it out as blocked can give me some more information. But here we see that she is at a crossroads. So this is that idea of orienting self, right? And orienting yourself in the middle of a crossroads means that you have to make a decision. You've got to go one way or another. You can't just kind of stroll haphazardly. You've got to make a choice one way or another. Now, there's another symbol called the third road that actually pushes against that concept, which is one of my favorite symbols. But there are, you know, the paths or the crossword cards in Lenormand is one of my favorite energies, because I think it's so important to know when we have to stop dithering and we simply need to make a decision and make some choices. And so in the realm of creative pursuits, in the realm of really making some major transformations going on that they might have going on, taking your power back being probably one of them, but you know, that it's time to make some decisions. It's time to stop talking about it, stop thinking about it, but time to actively make a decision to go one way or another. So that's something I would really highlight for somebody that I was reading for whenever we're at that moment where this is what you need to grab hold of. Kind of that Eight of Wands energy, right? Something is quickly coming your way and you've got to just grab hold. It's time to stop thinking and talking and just grab hold. So in the position of air, which is the realm of the mind, here we have actually the symbol for earth. So that's a pretty easy one, right? It's time to root and ground the mind. It is time to bring the mind down to a more solid space, a more, you know, physical space. Also, put the mind on physical things. I know I'm talking through her barking, but she's just driving me crazy today, and I've about given up and needing to do this anyways. And I've already given her a chewy. So I also like this when you think of it as putting your mind on physical things, which makes sense with the environment of spring showing up in the center issue, that she needs to bring her head down to practical concerns, perhaps. There, in the position of water, which is where our emotions are, we could read this as blocked. I'm, you know, not going to go too much into that in right this moment. Using blockages, I think, are really fantastic in any kind of casting system. I think far more, for me, I should rephrase that, far more important to me are blockages than are reversals, because, well, it can get really interesting which way things are pointing at each other. That's really cool. But in a lot of casting systems, it can be difficult to even know what's reversed and what's not reversed and where is it pointing. So what's far more interesting to me is what is face down and is not fully engaged energetically. That is fabulous energy to know. We do have, again, one of those, I think the 4 seasons and these 4 symbols of sort of life growth, maybe the most, you've got to stop and figure them out as you're using the system. Everything else I feel is pretty makes sense, but I've already kind of talked about that one. So this is in the second quadrant. This is a quadrant of development, right? This is that quadrant of, or this is the section, so to speak, of a child, youth, this youthful developing energy. that is surrounding the emotions and connections with other people. But remember, it did come up face down. So if we wanted to look at that kind of energy, then we could also see where there's some development that needs to occur emotionally right now, and or with the connections with other, how our emotions connect us to other people, that is being blocked in some way right now, that they might need to think about and pay attention to. So we have that there. And then the last section over here, which is the position of Earth. This is our physicality of life. Here we again have a blocked energy. If I want to do something separate on that, but I pay attention to it. I still put it up right because that's important, but I do try to pay attention to it. And when I use systems like OMs or runes that can come down face down, I do want to flip them over, obviously, to talk to a person. But what I do is I've got a lot of like little crystals like this that I use for making little grids. And so, you know, I might take that out and place one. I do this with, when I do a whole, like, say, OM casting, I'll go ahead and flip everything, but where things have been flipped down, I'll stick some sort of a pointer or a reference so that I can be aware that that particular figure was in reverse, so that as I come back, or as the person wants to refer to the image, they know which of the things had come up reverse. So having some little, you know, little crystal pieces or something like that, that can be really helpful in kind of keeping track of those things in any type of casting system that you might use. It's a little easier with charm casting, to be honest, because even when a figure comes up face down, you can still tell what the figure is, so you don't have to turn it over. I don't really usually flip charm casting because, you know, if my book is face down, I still know it's the book and I know it's face down. Really, for everything, I can tell that's the sun, but it's face down. So I don't flip charm casting things. I don't flip over, but runes and OMs and this, I think it's helpful to see what you're looking at and then just note to yourself in whatever way fits for you. To how, you know, you could even throw, you know, some little ones in the bottom of this if you wanted to. I'm always usually right here and I have a pile of them because I use them for all sorts of things when I do readings. That can be helpful to know that. So it's interesting that in the physicality, right, of Earth, we actually have the water. So we have water in Earth, but the blocked emotions, which we just talked about, some developing emotions that were face down, right? That energy is actually affecting their physical world. It's affecting their environment, which again doesn't surprising given that we have needing to sort of refresh the environment. And we can see in general there's some decisions that need to be made. There is definitely some ways they need to think about how they've given over, how they have perhaps not realized it, but they have given over responsibility or power or energy to a person or a situation that's not serving them well. And that sort of developing those emotions and things better was in reverse, so is blocked. And that, because remember this was reversed, that blocked energy is actually impacting their physical world. So that needs to be dealt with. There are decisions that need to be made so that movement and transformation can occur. So, you know, that got a little like informational, right? You try to do like quick general readings just to kind of show things, and it goes like, whoo, there's a lot more you could dig into, and I'll have to again talk to the person about. But I think that gives you a good example of how using the symbols in different ways to create spreads is no different or just as easy to do with the tokens as there are with cards. Of course, the only difference is that, you know, the images aren't giving you anything extra. So in that way, I would say that it's a lot more like Lenormand or Kipper, where the images don't matter, or certainly with Lenormand, right? A ship is a ship is a ship. As I've shown with my deck, you don't need a ship on the Lenormand card to understand that it's a symbol for the ship and for journey and for long journeys that take a while, for depth, for a sense of longing, for something that's long ahead of you, right? It doesn't matter what the picture is, it just speaks to that. And the symbols are the same thing. It doesn't matter, right? That there's no deep image here. This is a figure that stands for our intuition, that stands for diving into and looking inward, or having that energy out so that you can really see with an intuitive glance. We don't need a picture of, say, the High Priestess to be able to tap into that same understanding. Just like we don't really need a picture of the High Priestess to understand the energy of the High Priestess card. So it's kind of funny. I've just literally had this realization right here, live on camera. Not live, but on camera. It's kind of interesting that my very first thing that I did, which was a Lenormand deck, wherein I took away all of the pictures, right, to explore the concept that a mountain is a mountain is a mountain. It doesn't matter. A ship is a ship is a ship. It doesn't matter if there is an actual ship. We want to get to the energy or the essence of that particular card and not get hung up on the image. And you know, I'm doing something similar. Apparently that's a theme for me, where it's not so important, right? When we look at this card for blockages here, where the energy is blocking into a wall. We don't need a gorgeous image of, say, you know, a person struggling up a mountainside, or something along that nature. We don't need that to understand the concept of energy that's being blocked. And this is enough to cue us in on the fact that there is some blocked energy that's kind of hitting against a wall. And it's going to need to be rerouted or figured out how you're going to get yourself around that. So that's just, again, a little bit of a epiphany that apparently that's something that I appreciate in divination systems. Okay, so I'm going to put these up. So let's get into casting. I think that's enough for you to kind of see how you can use symbolic systems such as runes or oghams or charm casting or tokens to be able to use spreads just like you do with cards or any other type of system, any type of cartomancy system.